The cost of IT in business can be staggering. From hardware and software expenses to services like internet and phone, you don't need to spend a fortune on IT to succeed. If your organization spends more than $500 monthly on any service, or you're considering signing a long-term contract, IT Enabled can help you manage your technology and minimize your costs. Contact us today to schedule a free consultation. IT Enabled, we're here to help.
Hi, I'm Tara Watson-Watkins, President and CEO of the Lufkin, Angelina County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the Connect podcast, connecting business to the community. I'm here today with my co-host, Blake Pollino of BP Media Group.
This week, we have Natalie Thornton, the Executive Director of CASA, here on the podcast to share just tons of awesome information about all that they do, how they advocate for children here in Angelina County and in the surrounding areas to make sure that they have someone that represents them in really difficult parts of their life. So let's get in that episode now.
Well, we're excited to have my good friend and my neighbor, Natalie Thornton with CASA. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your background history, and then we'll talk about CASA.
Okay. Well, I'm Natalie Thornton, and I'm the director for CASA the Pines, which CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. It's a nationwide nonprofit. It's been around since 1972 or 76, something like that. Of course, it's only been around since 1996 here in Angelina County. Okay. I've lived here since I was 6 years old, I believe.
This is home.
Yes, I have lived here a long time, except for maybe going to school in Nacogdoches and living over there a little bit. But yes, and I've, I guess I just never moved. You know, I guess I didn't have a reason to feel like I needed to or needed, have had some good opportunities. And I started dating my husband when I was 18, and we got married when I was 22. And we have 2 kids, Joseph and Riley. And, you have a daughter who it really flies by. Yeah. You know, it's true that
Brent said earlier this week, he said, you realize we're halfway to 18. And I was like, stop yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go there.
Yeah, it is true. They're 20 and 24.
Wow.
And so, but someone said this to me, that the game is never over. You're just in overtime.
That's right.
For the rest of your life.
Exactly right. That's exactly
yes.
Right.
So,
well, how long have you been with CASA?
I've been there 12 years.
Okay.
I believe since 2009. Okay. Sometimes I get it off. At one point I was telling people I was there for 14 years. And Susan, at one point, she was like, Natalie, why do you keep on telling people you've worked here 14 years? We've worked here the same. She's worked like 6 months less than me. But yes, it was 2009. So maybe about a little over 12, I think now.
It all just starts to run together.
It does.
I'm at the age now where I'm embarrassed to say how many times I've actually gotten on the calculator app to figure out how old I am.
Yes.
I was like, I don't know how old I am anymore. Just whatever.
Yes.
It just stops mattering after a certain point. So tell us what CASA is and what it does for people that don't know.
Okay. As I stated before, it stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. Mm-hmm. And basically when a child is placed in foster care, then the local judges, they appoint what they call a guardian ad litem. Mm-hmm. And that is an actual position that's listed in the family code. And so the CASA advocate, who is a volunteer, is the person who is supposed to advocate for the child's best interest. Okay. And so how that is different than maybe some of the other positions is that CPS advocates for what the state wants, which typically is a lot of times best interest for the child, but it's not always because the state is bound by certain regulations. For example, sometimes something will happen in the state of Texas and they'll make a law that blankets everything. Okay.
Gotcha.
And then that law has to be applied to every foster care situation. Mm-hmm. And it isn't always that cut and dry or, easy to place like that. So that is who they represent. They represent the state. Additionally, CPS workers are often overworked. And there's a high turnover rate.
Right.
So a child may have a lot of different CPS workers. Also, if a child is placed in this area, they'll typically have the same CPS worker. But if they get placed what they call out of region, then other CPS workers will be the ones who go check on them.
Right.
And so sometimes the children are able to develop a really good bond with their CPS worker, and then sometimes they're not, just because of the nature of the beast.
Right.
Okay. And so also the children are appointed an attorney ad litem.
Mhm.
Okay, so an attorney ad litem is just like if you all hired an attorney.
Right.
Okay, they're supposed to represent what you want
Mhm.
and your legal rights.
Mhm.
Okay, so technically, if a child is in foster care and they're a teenager, and that teenager wants to be able to live on their own, and they're 16 years old,
Mhm.
that attorney is supposed to advocate for that.
Gotcha.
Okay, so if it's done, in which that's really good that they have that because they need someone
Mm-hmm.
to do that. But the CASA is the one who represents the best interest, and it's probably the reason that they're not the one that's being paid.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Interesting.
they're really the only one who's not being paid in the whole
they're
system.
the steady constant in the child's life.
Right. Yes.
So are they meeting with the child regularly? Are they kind of building a relationship with the child in the way that a CPS worker would? How does that work?
They do.
Mhm.
To me, it kind of reminds me of like if somebody had an aunt,
Mhm.
okay, that was a part of their life.
Mhm.
Not somebody that they live with, but somebody that they're close to
Right.
and that knows them.
Mhm.
When the case first starts, the CASA advocate works to get to know everything in the situation.
Gotcha.
And a typical requirement for a CASA advocate would be if they were local, if a child was local or within a certain parameters of mileage, they would visit the child for once a month.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, if they get farther away, then it's sometimes phone calls or virtual,
Mhm.
So, but they do definitely try to keep that contact that much. Also, they do other things besides just get to know the child. It's not just necessarily like a mentorship.
Right.
I mean, that falls into it, but
Mhm.
it's really not the primary thing. A lot of it is figuring out, making sure they're safe.
Mm.
A lot of kids, sometimes they go in foster care situations. They're just not good.
Mm-hmm.
Kids also, I don't know if you've ever heard of what an RTC is. An RTC stands for Residential Treatment Center.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like the modern day orphanage, for
Okay.
lack of a better term. It's like a facility.
Mhm.
Sometimes kids end up in psychiatric hospitals,
Mhm.
places, they're really not ideal for any human being, much less a child.
Sure.
So they go to these places, check on them, make sure that they're being taken care of appropriately.
Mhm.
They also work with their families. One of the big things and it's actually I would call it a statewide push.
Mhm.
It's a CPS push. The judges seem to be a lot more open to working with families.
Mhm.
And when we say families, not just the parents, but grandparents, aunt and uncles, cousins. And what we also call fictive kin, which if you've ever heard the expression before, maybe, some of the people on the podcast haven't, but fictive, like fictitious.
Mhm.
Okay. A fictive kin would be someone who isn't actually related to the child, but someone who's been in their life.
Gotcha.
Okay. Could be. And they may even call him, Uncle John.
Right.
And then you find out, that they're really not.
Yeah.
Sure.
We have some friends, and her son called my kids their cousins.
Mhm.
We didn't know that, and I don't know if he really thought that they were his cousins or if he just liked to say that they
Uh-huh.
were his cousins. He'd go,
Yeah.
"My cousins are coming to visit."
We have a lot
Yeah.
of those.
We
Yeah.
have a lot of those too.
Right.
Aunts and uncles that I'm not actually
Yeah.
related to, but
Yes.
it's just easier that way to
It is.
explain it than, they're cousins of my cousins or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah. Sometimes it can even be like a teacher
Sure.
or a neighbor.
Mhm.
Just different people.
Yeah.
Really working with them because studies have shown that kids do a lot better if they are placed with family.
Mm-hmm.
If they get
course.
put in foster care and they get to go live with somebody who they actually know, they kind of know the drill over there.
Mm-hmm.
They just respond so much better. They don't act out as much. They don't have as many. Being removed from your parents is a traumatic
I can't imagine.
thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all know that abuse and neglect is traumatic, but it is an additional severely traumatic thing. So if you can lessen that trauma in any way by being supportive, by helping them live
Yeah.
with family members, then you can definitely help, at least work through some of the things that these kids are going through.
So let's talk about foster care in Lufkin and Angelina County
Okay.
because I was shocked to know the small amount of foster families that were available here. I just thought there would be more, and how many kids that are from here having to be placed in other communities because we just don't have the amount of foster families.
Well, that is true. And another thing too, there's a lot of different layers to it.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. Let's say that there's a foster family in town and they are willing to take children that have fragile medical needs. Okay. If a child comes into care that's healthy, they're not going to be placed in that home in Lufkin, Texas,
Right.
because that home is specific to something else.
Mhm.
Okay. Also, another foster home, maybe they have 2 teenage boys, and then these 2 12-year-old girls come into care. They're probably not going to place them in that home
Yeah.
because that's really not going to be ideal. It's probably not going to mesh right. And you never know what kind of inappropriateness could happen or what kind of situations could arise. So when you think about that, there's not a lot. There's also, it has to fit.
Yeah.
We can't just
All the cards have to line
Yes,
up.
they do.
Mhm.
Okay, so because sometimes we'll have kids from other areas that are in foster care here,
Right.
and then vice versa, so they just kind of get placed all over. The goal is to not put them far away.
Yeah.
And that's another good reason for family is because often they don't have to change schools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If they can keep on going to the same school.
Mhm.
And we really work on that too.
Yeah. I
We-
would think the more constant you can keep in a child's life, the
Mhm.
better off.
Yeah, it really is. So
Yeah.
So what do you need to do to be a foster family?
a foster family, they have what they call child placing agencies.
Mhm.
I believe Grace Manor is one, Lone Star. Don't quote me on all this because there's been some that have closed,
Mhm.
and so it's pretty complicated,
Yeah.
and it's not really my wheelhouse to know a lot about.
But your advocates are working with those families.
Yes.
Is that right?
Right? Yeah,
Okay.
we work with them, but we don't train people to be
Right,
foster parents.
okay.
Mhm.
Sometimes we speak to foster care training groups, but it's really not what we do. I know
Gotcha.
it's hard. Buckner is one.
Yeah.
That does it's difficult. It's a lot to be a foster parent to the point that you have to send in. I believe you have to send in like a copy of your marriage license. You
Yeah.
have to send in.
Inspection of your
full-
home.
yes.
It's a whole deal.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. To be a CASA advocate is not as much, though.
Mhm.
Fortunately,
Yeah.
to be a CASA advocate, the first step is to do a pre-service interview and to fill out your application
Mhm.
because we
Mhm.
have to have your information.
Sure.
The interview is really, it's just to get to know the person to see if it's a good fit for them.
Mhm.
Sure.
Sometimes after the interview, not very often, but it's happened. The person's like, I don't think this is what I actually want to do.
Right.
It's also a good opportunity for us to find out where their strengths and weaknesses are as far as preparing them to be an
Mhm.
advocate. And so, and it's just a good get to know you.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, you want
Absolutely.
to know who you're working with.
Yeah.
So, after that, there are 30 hours of training for it. But
30, you said?
30,
30,
yes.
okay.
But fortunately, only 10 has to be face-to-face, or it can even be virtual with
Okay.
Zoom. The rest is independent study
Okay.
and watch videos and, I'll do different types of stuff in a workbook and manual.
Mhm.
The training focuses on, I would say, number one of the things it focuses on is teaching people, because this is the part that everyone would need, the understanding the court system.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like understanding that, what happens, after a child is removed, that there's a 14-day hearing called an adversarial hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have status hearings. And at the end, how long a court case can be. They can only be 12 months or there can be an extension.
Mhm.
Things like monitored return,
Mhm.
terms like that people wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not day-to-day vernacular. Then also really working with people to understand that a family can have strengths even if a family has a lot of problems. And we really, really want to work with people to realize that the very best thing for a child, or a very best thing for any situation, for the most part, would be family reunification.
Sure.
Right.
Also, even if there can't be family reunification, if there is a child who's, let's say, for example, their parent is a person addicted to drugs. Okay. If you're nice to that person and you are supportive of that person, that's in the best interest of that child,
Sure.
because they're going to want you to be nice to their parent.
Yeah.
And as much as we can sit here as parents and say, I would, jump in front of a train for my child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Children have that unconditional love for their parents
Mhm.
too.
Right.
It's maybe a little different,
Mhm.
but you really see how much they want most of the time, almost all the time, they really want a lot of affirmation from their
Yeah.
parents,
Sure.
and they want their parents to do well.
Mhm.
Even if they can't be returned to their parents, 5, 6, 7 years later, if that parent has been provided some resources, they may be able to have a good relationship with
yeah.
their parent. And if we don't work with them and we just dismiss them and treat them like they're not important, then we're not serving those children like we
Right.
should.
Right.
And so a lot of making sure that people realize, because a lot of people who become CASA advocates, I mean, frankly, are people who come from good homes,
Right.
people who are doing well in society,
Mhm.
people who want to make a difference, but maybe they haven't thought about, the flip side.
Sure.
So, and it can be hard,
Mhm.
especially when you see a sweet little baby and you want the
You
best.
want the best for them.
You do. You want
Yeah.
the best for them, and then you see a parent who makes promises
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
they don't follow through with.
Yeah.
But
Well, God love the volunteers that you have and the work that you do, because I think I know my limits on volunteering, and I don't
Yeah.
think I would want to take all the kids home and
Yeah.
just love on them.
yeah, that's what most people say.
I'm interested.
Most of the children, you really
You
wouldn't
really
wanna
don't.
take them.
No, you don't.
Just
You got yours. You're fine. Yeah.
No, you really wouldn't.
What are some specific ways that an advocate is advocating for the child? Like, what do you see it most common? Is it within their living situation, or
Oh,
what are they
okay.
usually advocating for the most specifically?
Probably placement.
Is it placement?
Mhm, yeah.
Right.
Each CASA advocate makes a court report,
Mm-hmm.
and then they testify at court
Okay.
with that information, and they make
Okay.
recommendations. But yeah, I would say placement is the number one, whether or not a parent, children should go back, which would be placement,
Right.
So
So if
Um,
that child should remain in the foster care system, or if that child should go back to their family, is that kind of
or if that child should be adopted by, our
Mhm.
goal is permanency for
Right.
children.
Mhm.
Okay. And that can be achieved through different ways.
Gotcha.
It could be achieved through, number one, family reunification. It could be achieved through a child going and being permanently placed with a grandparent,
Mhm.
or it could be through adoption. So,
Hmm.
it just depends.
I can't imagine how hard that is, because when you're advocating for these kids, I feel like in most situations, these kids, even if it's a difficult home situation, they still want to be with their parents, right?
That's
They still
right.
want to be
Most
at
of the
home.
time. Mhm.
So you're having to kind of navigate that, right? And sometimes that best situation may not be for them to be in that.
Right.
So they have to go and testify that it may be not staying with their family, right?
Yes. The children are typically not at court.
Right.
So you're not actually having
to see that in front of them.
Right in front of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. They are sometimes some of
Mm-hmm.
the older kids, and often kids will want to have a private meeting with the judge
Gotcha.
to share, where they. And often too, every case is different.
Mhm.
Sometimes it becomes kind of a custody issue
Right.
too, because you may have the dad who hasn't been very involved in the case with the child's life, and then you have the mother who maybe is struggling with addiction, and so then she gets better, or maybe she doesn't get better. Does the child go live with the dad? What if the dad is from Michigan?
Mhm.
That's right.
So-
then you're changing everything.
Yes.
Right.
Every case is
Yeah.
different.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And sometimes it's not necessarily an abuse issue as much as it is just a best interest issue in
Right.
those kind of cases,
Mhm.
because that there are times when there may be 3 sets of people who want a child. It may be the foster parents, it may be a grandparent, it may
Mhm.
be a actual literal bio parent.
Yeah.
It just depends. You have those cases, and then you have cases where, unfortunately, that's not the way it is. Those cases are difficult to
Yeah.
work, when you
Yeah.
have all those people, but we always think too, at least there's a lot of people that
Yeah,
want this
that want this
child.
child.
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
So it definitely, and that is a time that a CASA advocate can really make a difference,
Mhm.
because they're the ones who often really know and get to know these people and these situations, because often you may have what seems like a really good aunt and uncle, and then you also may have some really good foster parents, and that the CASA advocate can really make a difference
Sure.
in their objectivity into the
Interesting.
situation.
That's great.
So how are you funded?
Just a variety of ways. We do receive some state and federal funding. Those would be our primary. We have some family foundations, the TLL Temple Foundation, the E.L. Kurtz Jr. Foundation, individual giving, and then we also have 2 fundraisers a year. We have our online auction, which we've really grown and promoted, and it's for lack of a better term, it's an easy way, to get people involved.
Sure.
And
they don't have to go anywhere.
Right.
Yes.
And then lastly, we have our CASA Christmas Home Tour.
So let's talk about the home tour.
Which Tara knows all about.
My favorite.
Yes.
It's one of the best days of the year.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's our 24th year
That's great.
to do the tour. And this year it's set for Thursday, December 8th.
Okay.
It's a come and go event from 3 to 7:30. And people buy a ticket. And it is $20 a ticket until December 1st. And then the ticket goes up to $25. And we have sponsorships available too.
And what is the home tour for people who may not have attended before?
Oh, I'm sure everybody knows what the home tour
Yeah,
is.
we got to cover all the bases for these podcast people.
The home tour is an opportunity that we have 4 or 5 homes. They open up their homes and they decorate big or their homes. It varies. Some people may have a home that has some kind of really interesting feature. It may be an historic home in the community. It may be a home that just has Christmas in every nook and cranny. It just depends, but there's always some kind of general universal appeal. And then people can go through. It's kind of a girls' night deal. We're doing something new this year.
Good.
And I thought about your podcast that I was at with the First Friday when Bob
episode.
Sanford said, well, there's something that, and he kind of dangled that carrot and he wouldn't say what it was. And I thought about doing that, but I'm not going to.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Glad.
This year, we're going to have what we call the CASA Passport on the back. We're going to have 6 coupons, and people can take those coupons and use them. And there are going to be some good coupons, like a free glass of wine at the Restoration Bistro is one of them. We're going to have Live Well is going to have a coupon. I hate to say the businesses because we don't have the coupon quite set.
It's okay.
But I mean, it's 6 businesses that are 6 local,
coupons.
and it's going to have Roma's. Should be one too.
Sure.
Roma's Italian Bistro.
All you got to say is there's 6, and so far one of them is wine. So
That's
that's
right.
all you got.
We're done.
You're done.
Probably 2 of them
Maybe
are.
2 of them are wine. All right, exclusive on the podcast.
But the
great.
other 4 will not be.
Okay.
So we'll have a variety for
That's great.
different
That's great.
types of people.
That's just enough
Yes.
dangling the carrot, I think, for people to be interested
Yes.
in it. So-
Natalie was joking, saying that I know all about it. We have a group of it's my mom's best friends, and so I'm the driver, and we start we meet up at lunch, and then we start the day off Christmas shopping.
Sure.
And then we do the home tour, and then we have a dinner because all of our birthdays are within a month of each other.
Oh, that's
And
great.
so then we have our birthday dinner, and we do birthday gifts that night.
Oh,
It
that's
is the
awesome.
best day of the
How
year.
many years do you think that at least your mom's been doing it? Maybe, I don't know.
I
you
would
had
say
a-
20 years.
20.
Yeah.
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 That's
Because,
great.
I came back home in 05, and I know we've been doing it before I came home.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. And
It's fun.
I mean, if somebody does something 20 years in a row, it must not be
good,
a
right?
bad
Yeah,
thing.
it must be
Yes.
fun. Yeah,
We
it's-
love it.
It's a
Can't
big
wait.
deal. My wife and my mom and all of their friends go every year, so it's a Lufkin establishment.
It is.
It
It's fun.
is.
And you get ideas of new things to take home and do at your
Oh,
house.
yeah.
And it's just a fun day to be together and know that, the money that's being raised is going to a great organization. So,
Yeah.
And Tara, you know this, and a lot of people know. But if you've been doing fundraising for a long time, your goal, of course, is to make money. But having other things about, a fundraiser isn't just about making money.
that's right.
CASA is able to have created a Christmas tradition for this community.
That's right.
And just kind of like the Forest Festival. That's part of the community now is
That's
to have
right.
the Forest Festival.
One of the first things I put on my new calendar every year, I go and put on CASA Home Tour.
That's great.
Because it's typically always the first Thursday of December, but the way the calendar falls this year,
We're going to do
throws-
December 8th.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm telling you,
Mm-hmm.
so I put it on my calendar every year.
And one of the reasons it actually is we looked at December 8th a little bit more is because when we were asking people this summer, there was somebody I asked, and she had told me that I wouldn't want to do it if it was too close to Thanksgiving because she really liked to decorate for Thanksgiving. And so I looked at the calendar and was like, well, it's December 1st or December 8th.
Uh-huh.
We could just do December 8th. So when I gave her a call,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said, hey, we're going to do December 8th this year, so
Yeah.
before, because I knew what, her parameters were.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so,
That's great.
yeah.
That's awesome.
That's great. Well, what can people do to help you? Sign up to become an advocate, help donate, help with the CASA home tour. How are ways that we can help you?
I would say our biggest need are to have CASA advocates.
Okay.
And that they can do by visiting our website, calling our office. It's casapines.org is our website. And so it has the volunteer application on there. If they just want more information, then, give us a call and we can give you, we have people come by and, just, okay, well, what's this about? And, pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And so even if you're just not, if they're not sure, so, but one thing I really thought a lot about lately is that sometimes people, they think, well, I don't really make a difference at my job. You ever talk to people who kind of act that way?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
And it really made me think a lot about that because, I'm the director there. I don't actually work that much with children,
Mhm.
because there's actually one kid who would actually be in our program right now that would know who I was.
Mhm.
That's how many, so I'm not really doing that. My job really isn't that much different than somebody who works anywhere
Right.
because I work with staff who work with customers. And I consider CASA a business.
Mhm.
I consider, to me, our primary customer are our advocates
Mhm.
because we're providing them a volunteer experience.
Mhm.
And if you think about when you meet people, they rarely say, man, I just wish I hadn't done that volunteering.
Interesting.
They may say, I wish I hadn't bought that car.
Yeah.
Wish I hadn't, married that man.
Right. Right.
But they rarely say, I wish I had not helped in
Interesting.
whatever it
I love
is.
that.
Yeah.
People love to volunteer and it
Mhm.
gives them a sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
And if you can, because we had this advocate once who she was actually one of our Crockett advocates.
Mhm.
And she was real involved with CASA. And she had cancer, but it came back and she passed away. And before she passed away, she said, I don't feel like my life started until I began with
Mm.
CASA.
Wow.
And she had even been like the Citizen of the Year.
Yeah.
She had really been a volunteer.
Yeah.
I think she just really dedicated her life to all that. And her funeral was just such a celebration
Right.
because of how much she had impacted the
Yeah.
community. But back to what I was saying too, is when people say, I don't make a difference at my job, everyone makes a difference at their job.
Mhm.
I feel like I make a difference by working hard, treating people with respect, being nice. Being nice to the other people at our office.
Mhm.
We have a really good, I don't know what you call it, a dynamic in our
Mhm.
office. Get along well with each other, and that's important to me, and it should be important to everyone. It isn't just about somebody shouldn't think, well, I don't make a difference at my workplace. Everybody makes a difference
That's right.
everywhere they go.
Yeah.
And people need to take responsibility for
That's
that.
right.
Absolutely.
So-
Well, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing
Oh.
your story and the story of the organization. Absolutely love that. And thanks for letting us know where people can find you and how they can volunteer. So we really appreciate your time.
Well,
and
thank you
coming on
for
the podcast.
allowing me to be here. Have a really good time.
Yeah, thank you so much. We want to thank you so much for listening to the podcast again this week. Please go check out CASA. If you can volunteer, if you can become an advocate, if you can donate, make sure you're on the Christmas home tour. Any way that you can help will be hugely beneficial to a really, really important organization here in our community. If you'll do me a huge favor, if you'll rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening or watching, just helps other people in the community who are interested in this type of podcast to find it. So
Give
thank
it
you so
5
much.
stars.
Give it 5 stars.
Please,
That's
yes.
right. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week.